You're now tuned into the fourth season of Atypical Voices in Our Time, the official podcast of Chemistry Productions, a media education company. Let's get it started.
That's AVIOT.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? It is Jay Stokes of the AVIOT podcast, your gracious host. Nice to be with y'all again. I'm recording this podcast episode late, and that's because I had a lot of work to do today, but we move. I want to get into today's subject matter quite quickly because I don't know if I'm going to rant and rave about this. It depends on my mood, but yeah, let's just get right into it. I want to talk to you first about this individual by the name of Jeffrey Epstein. He was a wealthy American financier and a convicted sex offender who was arrested for his crimes, and he reportedly took his own life in prison. I don't think this happened. I don't think he took his life while he was incarcerated. I believe that his life was taken, not by him. And that's because while he was engaged in this sex offending, and he was dealing with minors, with girls, and the sex trafficking involved girls and women. He also had the contacts of other wealthy individuals, other powerful individuals, celebrities, allegedly. And so I believe a lot of people didn't want their names to get out there and their reputations ruined, so they took him out. That's just me. That's my conjecture. We know that this person he visited him and that he had a decent relationship with him, the current US president. We know that. We've seen pictures of them together. Now, new information has come out saying that because the current administration and the current US president, they're denying how close he was to Jeffrey Epstein. But we keep seeing that there are more and more documents that are proving he had close ties. And one of those documents that recently came out was this quote unquote birthday book. And the birthday book was a collection of documents that were put together by the accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. And that it's in itself, that just speaks to how some women, they aren't really They don't care about protecting other women and girls. All they care about is stuff in their pockets or going along with these sexual thrills. They love being around powerful men. That's just how they are. But anyways, Ghislaine Maxwell reportedly put together this birthday book. And in this book, it's a collection of different memories for Jeffrey Epstein. I believe there are some nude pictures of women in there. And so the current US president, he allegedly wrote a letter that was featured in this birthday book, and it has a drawing of a woman's silhouette, and it has a signature allegedly in this, I guess, picture, this document that was put into this book. Now, his base, they are saying this didn't happen. This is not anything that's affiliated with the current US president. That signature that's on this photo or this document, that's a forged signature, or that doesn't match up with the current US president. However, if you look at his signature from the early 90s, now this document that he added to this birthday book, this document was given in, I think, the early 2000s, and it featured the president's signature from then. If you actually look at his signature and you look at the signature from the 90s, the early 2000s, it resembles the president's signature. So no matter what he says, there is a high likelihood that this letter, this document, did come from him. Why is his base trying to distance him from Jeffrey Epstein? Because they don't want it to be said that he messed with little kids or that he was involved in sex trafficking. Now we know that he was found liable for sexual abuse or sexual misconduct with a woman and other women in the past. We already know that. So it's not really hard to imagine that he would be involved in sex trafficking or dealing with underage girls or abusing women with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think that's difficult to imagine based off of the fact that he has done this and we have record of this, right? So my thoughts are, even if we find out that he was messing with underage girls, like we have the hard evidence that he was messing with underage girls and involved in sex trafficking, I don't think there's going to be much of a change with what's going on now. What more is there to be outraged about with the US president? We know that he has done terrible things and he continues to do and say terrible things. He is racist.
Yes.
He is ableist. He is a misogynist. All the ists. that is what it is. What it is. So I think even if we have hard proof of his ties with Jeffrey Epstein and what's happened, I don't think that's going to change much of anything. His base, they're willing to follow him to the edge of the earth. They're willing to follow him to any length. There is no line when it comes to his base and their support for him. The line might be here, they're going to step over the line. The line's going to move further, they're going to step over the line. That's just how it goes. So I'm curious to know if they have hard proof, hard evidence what's going to happen, because you look at the Conservative Party, they control the House, they have the majority in the House, they have the majority in the Senate, and they have the White House.
Damn.
I doubt they're going to try and oust him out. He really is Teflon Don. Just everything bounces off of him. Nothing can penetrate him, it seems. So my thing is, if y'all are after these files and what's in it, and if there's hard evidence on what he did with Jeffrey Epstein, I hope you have an end game. And I don't mean to sound cynical. I'm just saying everything that has happened thus far has shown that there is no holding crooks accountable. There are literal crooks, literal people that are not qualified for their jobs, that occupy the White House, that occupy members of the Senate, the House, that are connected with the current US president. That's what it is. And yet, the country's still in disarray.
That's terrible.
Enough with being outraged, actually do something. Enough with the talking points. You're preaching to the choir. He's a crook. You're preaching to the choir. He's a racist. You're preaching to the choir. But then what? Then what? It seems like every bit of law and order that this country stands for, it means nothing when it comes to this presidency. Let's move on to this topic right here. Now, the Fourth Amendment, it states that government agents may not stop and detain people without reasonable suspicion that there is a legal basis to do so. Right? That's what the Fourth Amendment says. Let me read it again since I'm stuttering over my words. The Fourth Amendment says government agents may not stop and detain people without reasonable suspicion that there is a legal basis to do so. Despite this, the Supreme Court just recently overturned a federal judge's order that prohibited federal agents in Los Angeles from stopping people and questioning them about their immigration status based solely on factors like their ethnicity. Basically, what they're saying is federal agents in Los Angeles, they can stop people under suspicion that they might be undocumented. If you're listening to the AVIOT podcast on a streaming service, make sure to leave a rating and a review so we can grow our platform. There are 4 factors that they can use to stop people. The fact that they speak English with an accent or speak Spanish, their presence at a particular location like farms or pickup sites for the day, the type of work they do, and their race and ethnicity. One thing I must say, these people I will vote for Donald Trump, these Latinos that voted for him, I hope you're happy. Because you can be detained, you can be stopped based on how you look.
That's correct.
If someone feels that you might be an undocumented immigrant, I'm not going to say illegal alien because no one in this world is illegal.
No.
And aliens are from outer space. We are humans. So if you're an undocumented immigrant or if you look like an undocumented immigrant, rather, federal agents in Los Angeles can stop you and they can question you. They could possibly harass, abuse you, do what they want, keep you detained for a period of time. It can happen. It's against the law. But guess what? The Supreme Court ruled in favor of it. I saw this good quote on Threads, this good post. They pretty much said that there is no law. The law is whatever rich people say the law is. Whatever rich and powerful people say is the law, that is the law. So yeah, we can have all these written statutes, we can have the Constitution, we can have all these written rules, but if a wealthy, powerful person says, I don't want to do that, then it's not happening.
Nope.
And it's really unfortunate because what you're going to have is people just minding their business, going about their day, and because they might speak Spanish or they might look Latino, you're going to have federal agents in Los Angeles stopping them and saying, hey, show me your identification. If you don't have your identification, they could lock you up. They could potentially abuse you. I tell you, man. And that's why I go back to this whole Jeffrey Epstein situation. If the president is found to be guilty of sex trafficking, of raping women, of sexually assaulting women, of dealing with minors, then what? Will his base really be outraged? We have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, over here saying that the president was an informant, an FBI informant, not the Speaker of the House, the Speaker Mike Johnson, I should say. He's saying that the president was an FBI informant that was trying to take down Jeffrey Epstein.
What Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms.
And then later he walks these comments back. He's like, well, I didn't really mean that.
I don't know if I used the right word. I said FBI informant. I'm not sure. I wasn't there. This is in my lane. I'm just repeating what is common knowledge and has been out in the public for a long time. President Trump was never a hindrance to the Epstein investigation. He was trying to assist in that. He is disgusted.
It's like his base will do whatever they can to cover his tracks because they like what he stands for. He stands for white supremacy. He stands for making sure that America is not, in fact, diverse. You look at the birth rates in the United States, we see that the birth rates amongst white women are lower, that they're producing less babies. And I don't mean to paint the picture like they're a factor or anything, but for lack of better words, producing less babies, giving birth to less babies, that's probably the better way to say it.
No.
So you have higher populations of Latinos, have higher populations of darker people in this country. And that base that supports this current presidential administration is like, oh no, we cannot have that. Not at all. So they're going through any lengths they can to deport Latinos, even if they're legally allowed to be in the United States. I'm telling you, they're trying to figure out a way to deport black folk too. Black folk who are the descendants of chattel slavery. I'm telling you, they're trying to find a way. Because they're like, nah. We got to make sure this country is as white as possible. Here's the thing, though. There's a lot of fear mongering around immigrants in general, Latino immigrants, I should say. However, I'm actually writing a piece on that, and I'm trying to have that piece come out this Friday. I definitely have my work cut out for me because it's going to be Wednesday, then Thursday. So that gives me 2 days to really put this piece together. But as I'm reading, I'm finding out that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes, the first-gen immigrants and the ones that are right off the boat. Even in one study I saw, undocumented immigrants are less likely to be criminals as opposed to legal immigrants that are here in the United States. What happens is they go through this, I guess, Americanization. There's a word they used. Assimilation. They assimilate to American culture. And as they assimilate to American culture, you start seeing more immigrants committing crimes. In another study I read, they were talking about how immigrant kids, when they grow up, they're more prone to criminality, or they're more likely to commit a crime than people who are older who immigrate to the United States, because they haven't been indoctrinated with a lot of the thoughts, ideas that a lot of Americans have. And a lot of immigrants, they come over here for a better life, because in their home countries, they might be dealing with war. Think about refugees that come to America for solitude, for peace, to seek refuge, right? They're coming here for a better life. So they're not coming here saying, I'm going to commit crimes. And it's interesting that this is the case because a lot of times immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, they're coming over into poor environments. They don't have as much resources. And we know that those are risk factors when it comes to committing crimes, to committing violence. But for immigrants, it seems like these are not risk factors. They say, well, despite me being in a lower economic situation, I'm going to work hard and try to survive for my family. I'm going to work hard and send money back home to my family so that they could eventually come over here, maybe legally, so they can maybe even do well in their homes. So that's what we're finding. Yes, if people are coming over here undocumented, there has to be a process so that they can legally be here. I don't believe that people should just be coming into, okay, there's a whole situation when it comes to the immigration thing in general, because you look at how America was quote unquote founded, right? It was founded on genocide and slavery and hardship, right? A lot of people who are non-white, and even white folk too, were mistreated, and they were killed and they were harmed in the founding and development of the country we know today as the United States of America. So there are many people who are immigrating here that actually have rightful, I guess, I wouldn't say rightful ownership, but they rightfully belong. When you're talking about tribal groups, when you're talking about people that were pushed out, their descendants are coming back here. So it is a bit tricky. However, based on the rules that we have now in the United States, people who are coming into the country and undocumented, I do think that there should be a better path for them to legally come into the United States, because I know it is definitely difficult. Not from personal experience, but from what I've read on the subject from individuals I know who have immigrated to the United States legally. I know that the process can be kind of tough for several individuals, but people just want to better their lives. I also think that America is always meddling in the affairs of other countries. Why not try and help other countries become more peaceful, so that way people aren't running here to try to find refuge? Just a thought. Just a thought. Speaking of the birth rates of white children, I saw an article today that was speaking on marijuana being a risk factor for women being infertile or not being able to have children. In fact, this headline from CNN Health says marijuana may cause chromosomal defects in human egg cells.
Oh no.
So basically, marijuana can damage oocytes, which are unfertilized eggs in female ovaries, and that can make it harder for women to conceive. It can make it so that they have miscarriages, and children can be born with defects, birth defects, based on the fact that you're taking marijuana prior to conceiving or becoming pregnant, or taking marijuana while pregnant. THC, that substance that gives you the high effect, that chemical that's found in marijuana or cannabis that gives you that high effect, it's not good to be consuming that while you're pregnant.
No.
In fact, while you're pregnant in general, I think that the consensus is not really good to be consuming medicines. Don't quote me on that. Certain substances, I would say, it's not good to consume. Like, it's not good to smoke. Shouldn't be drinking, right? Fetal alcohol syndrome. You shouldn't be smoking marijuana, ingesting marijuana, cannabis. You shouldn't be doing that. And I think this study, I'm glad that it's out there, and I'll probably make a more structured video on that in a real format that I'll put on social media. But it's not really surprising. Why are you doing weed while you're pregnant? Marijuana addiction is a thing, though, I will say. People are really addicted to that substance, and it's like they can't function without it. So it's easier said than done for some people. But if you're trying to conceive, let's think about the health of the children. Let's think about the health of the mother, actually, because you want to make sure you go through a relatively easy birthing process. So let's just do better. With that, let's get into updates. All right. I said I had a lot of work to do prior to doing this podcast episode right here. Obviously, there's my day job, and then after my day job, there's the 9 to 5, and then there's the 5 to 9, right? I was putting together a lot of reels for social media, chemistry, which this is the official podcast of AVIOT, chemistry productions, is definitely a tough business, a tough LLC to run, because I'm educating people, trying to make sure I get my facts straight. Then at the same time, I'm putting out material, giving my own thoughts and opinions, right? But I want to make sure that my thoughts and opinions aren't too crazy, too overboard. Now, I've put out things that people disagree with, and that's fine. My goal is to build community when it comes to this platform. Even with this podcast right here, and this podcast episode, I want people to leave comments. I want to respond to them. I want to grow.
Yes.
I remember on the AVIOT Sunday Brew, which is a live show we do every Sunday, this individual had asked me to talk about BRICS, and I'm still working on that. When it comes to foreign affairs, that is not my strong suit. So I'm working on being able to fully dive into those topics and explain it in a way that is palatable to the public. So there is that. I also mentioned earlier in this episode that I have an article that's going to be coming out later on this week speaking on immigrants, specifically immigrants and criminality, because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions regarding that. And I do believe my voice is needed in that area. I saw this ASMR video that the current administration had put out regarding immigrants and deportations, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. That's actually what sparked my interest in writing this article. And I had it in the tank for months now, but now is the time to finally deliver that piece. I'm happy that every week I've been writing an article. It started with my article speaking on Lil Nas X and substance use and celebrities. Then the next week I spoke on, what did I speak on? Trying to remember. I know I did one on black crime. Matter of fact, I have my phone right here. I go look. If y'all are familiar with medium.com, you can look on there, and that's where you can find the articles that I write. Please see those articles, share those articles, and like the articles. It's a way for me to get paid, and unfortunately, that's how the bills get dealt with through money. And also, in order to build this platform, build this company, I do need money. I do need income. So I would appreciate that. The article I wrote after the Lil Nas X one was dealing with the bad boy aesthetic, speaking on women specifically, but people's appreciation or joy when it comes to hood dudes, thugs, gangsters, bad boys in society. And I connected this to the new Clips album, or the latest Clips album, Let God Sort 'Em Out, and how you had some girls or women that were thirsting over Malice, even though he was a former drug dealer, and they were saying that edge is what caused them to really like him. And then after that, I talked about black on black crime using the Amanda Seales Jubilee debate that she had with quote unquote 20 black conservatives. So there's that. But continue to support us, continue to support Chemistry Productions, all the material that we put out, continue to support the AVIOT podcast. I appreciate everyone who listens. And believe me, this is a lot of work. So when you listen, that listen goes a long way. It really makes me feel good. It makes me feel that whatever I'm doing is worth it. All right, y'all, let's get into the topic of the day. For this topic of the day, I saw a thread post, and I'm going to read it for you all right now. It goes like this. My daughter called me 15 minutes after I dropped her off at school and told me she got dress coded for her skirt. Same skirt she's been wearing for a month. I said, put the teacher on. Turns out it's not even her teacher, but a random teacher she doesn't have stopped her before going to homeroom and made her go to the office and wants me to pick her up. Then the teacher says, you had 4 weeks to get her a proper uniform. Convo over. I drove up to the school. Now magically, the skirt is fine. So basically what happened was this woman, black woman, has her black daughter go to school and she's wearing a skirt, and even though the skirt was fine before, I guess a new teacher sees it and they report it and they say that this skirt is inappropriate. The woman shared the picture of her daughter wearing a skirt online, which I wish she didn't do, because she didn't need to do that. I don't like when people share their children online, but hey, that's just me. And the skirt looked fine, like it wasn't short or anything.
And now for a quick commercial break.
Hey guys, as you can hear, we are unapologetic in our opinions. We may be politically incorrect or possibly wrong, but don't knock us for being ourselves and saying what many are too afraid to admit out loud. Anyways, if you have any thoughts or questions about our show, email us at chemistryproductions@gmail.com. That's K3MISTRY productions@gmail.com. We'll be sure to address whatever you have to say.
I felt the type of way about this because a lot of times Black girls, they get adultified very early. And I felt that because she was looked to as more of an adult, that even though the skirt was fine, her wearing it, the perception of her made it seem that this skirt was inappropriate. The adultification of Black girls is not healthy. It can lead to mental health problems in Black girls that follow them into adulthood. That could lead to substance use, that could lead to low self-esteem, that could lead to hypersexuality that could be used in a bad way. Right? Selling your body. Not saying that people who sell their body are inherently bad or that it's a bad behavior, but you don't want that behavior influenced by outside conditions that make a girl that turns into a woman, that evolves into a woman, feel bad about herself or feel that her body is her commodity or her body is the only thing that's worth something. You don't want that. So I feel when Black girls are adultified and they're looked to in a certain light, then you get a self-fulfilling prophecy. You think they look like an adult, so then they end up acting like an adult because they're treated like an adult. And the cycle continues. I feel this connects a lot to the topics that I was talking about earlier regarding race and this idea about how whiteness needs to be put on a pedestal and everything else should not be. When you adultify Black girls, you're looking to them as abnormal. And then when they become women, you view them as deviants because you see them as hypersexualized or you see them as objects. And this all starts from the adultification of Black girls.
That's correct.
It's a ripple effect. When you start something young, it ends up turning into something that's potentially dangerous.
Time.
Dang, Siri. Why are you? I tell you, man, Siri on these phones, man, they be listening to everything you be saying. That's why when you really be having deep conversations, turn your phone off, turn your watch off, get away from the TV, go into a secluded area where there is no technology. Why? Maybe I pressed the button. But I also wanted to connect this whole idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy to tipping. I saw this other video on TikTok actually where this Black woman was speaking about these perceptions of how Black people tip and how that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When servers, waiters, waitresses see a Black group, they may have these stereotypes in their head that this Black group's not going to tip, so they end up giving them poor service. Then because of the poor service, the Black person saying, I'm not going to tip you well, or I'm not going to tip you at all. And then the server says, after they're done and the Black people leave, see, they didn't tip us. They're horrible tippers. But you caused that because you had the thought in your mind that they were bad tippers. Black people actually do tip. They do. It's just the service has to be good. Don't give bad service and think that you're going to get a good tip. I worked in the service industry. I've delivered food to people in a restaurant. And I've gotten tipped well by Black folk. I've gotten tipped poorly by non-Black folk. It all depends. Everybody's different. But those stereotypes, nah. Let's not do that because that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Ultimately, connecting it back to the beginning. We have to stop looking at whiteness, and I'm gonna preach this as long as I live. We have to stop looking at whiteness as better and that everything is a challenge to whiteness. In fact, I would say people have to be able to exist. White supremacy is what should be challenged and what should be done away with. To be white does not mean you're great. To be white does not mean that you're better than anyone else or you're inherently smart or you're inherently gifted. To be white is just to be white. You're just an individual with lighter skin, pale skin, a different complexion. That's that. However, the fear of losing that because of all this indoctrination over the years of that being better is what caused this current administration to come to be. Is what causes the racial profiling of Latinos and Black folk, to be honest. is what causes the adultification of black girls, what causes the stereotypes about black people and tipping. With that, I thank y'all for listening to this episode, and we will see y'all next time. Peace.
So go a little something like this. That's AVIOT.